Expenses in business are as certain as the sunrise, yet both my guest today and I meet prospective clients all the time who don't seem to have a handle on them. If you don't, problems are coming. Planning expenses is a natural requirement of any successful practice, and my guest today helps our clients do just that, among other things. I'm Carl White, principal at Mark Advisory Group, which is a healthcare marketing agency, and I'm also the host of Practice Care. The mission for both is the same, and that's to help private practice owners stay private. It's usually what they want, but care is better when it's the providers of care who own the practice, because then we can make sure that every decision, whatever it is, business, clinical, whatever, is made by those who are giving care so that patient care will always stay top of mind. My guest today is Michelle O'Connor. Michelle is a believer in following one's dreams, and she has risen from an inner city community to a life of abundance. With corporate expertise in strategic planning and execution, she helps entrepreneurs achieve their goals. Michelle supports organizations through strategic processes, coaching entrepreneurs to develop action plans for success. She's facilitated strategic planning retreats in Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, and the Dominican Republic, and she's reached hundreds through her purpose-driven conference. Her current mission is to help medical private practice owners create sustainable practices. As a wife and mother, she strives for a brighter future, motivated by the philosophy, forgive my possible mispronunciation, ad astra per aspera.
Yes.
Michelle's a returning guest. I got it right. Welcome
Yes.
back. It's been a minute since
Thank
we
you.
talked. Yes.
Yes, it's always good to be here. We have very good and impactful conversations. So yes.
And a shared history of large corporate life. So
Yes.
there's some battle scars there that we can roll up our sleeves and show each other
Trauma
later.
bonding, we call it.
Corporate refugees, exactly. So we're talking about, planning your expenses, being more planful on the expense lines. We'll get into it. But before we do, for those who haven't heard another episode with you or don't know you, just fill in a bit more about yourself. Tell us more about you.
Okay. So, as I think you shared a very great summary in the introduction, I'm Michelle O'Connor, business growth strategist, and I took my experience from corporate now to helping, practice owners to create plans for their business that not see them running from practice to practice, working in government and being burnt out, but really creating sustainable plans that can help them to grow and grow
Mhm.
in a seamless way. And your business will always require a lot of you.
Mhm.
Always, having a plan doesn't erase that at all, but at least you know what you're working towards. And we probably would have shared here before that we get from persons. I didn't learn business in school. I just
Mhm.
had an idea, or somebody said this is the way I should go, and so I jumped at it. And so my job is to bring the expertise in
Mhm.
the same way, or doctors don't want us medicating and diagnosing ourselves.
Mhm. Right.
We're saying, listen, leave the marketing to Carl and the business growth strategy to Michelle.
Right. Very good. Okay, so big topic, planning your expenses versus just paying what comes. Why do you think, I mean, you and I see it both, and not just in private practice, but it's pretty, I'm sure we could both say the same about ourselves in some way, um, but this sort of common failure to plan for expenses.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why do you think it is?
I think expenses in general or doing a complete budget is a very emotional thing that people go through. And for me to
You mean
see
like the emotion, like, oh God, I don't want to do this, or
emotional, I don't want to do it. And two, when I see the number, it's going to have an effect on me.
yeah.
So guess what? You know what? I'm going to have to pay the expenses anyway. So let me just pay the expenses. Also, I think there has been this way of sharing how a business grows where everybody's focusing on revenue. Let
Mm,
me help you to hit $1 million, or I hit X 500,000, and nobody really talks about the expenses in that way. You don't
mm,
have conversations about profit after tax or return on investment, or that is not a fancy word that people talk about. Revenue, let's talk about revenue.
yeah.
So persons tend to focus on what they can bring in because that number probably feels better.
Hmm.
Because when they then talk about what is deducted from what they bring in, what is left is they don't want to face it. Or
Hmm.
they don't want to face it because they don't know what to do when the number is low or the number is not something that is sustainable.
Yeah.
The fact that they may probably don't know how. So those are just some things that I've found
Hmm.
impact persons talking about their expenses in general.
Yeah. They seem like barriers, right? Like if I I have to pay this and that's going to make it harder to be profitable or that's going to make it harder to grow. I had, do I, and the answer of what to do about them isn't always clear, but
Yeah.
hard to make expenses better
And I think it's
or more
completely
knowable if you don't know where you're starting from.
if you don't know, because if it is, you know that you're going to have to pay this amount. For
Mhm.
example, the first time I did my financial planning the way I should do it for my own business,
Mhm.
I realized that I wasn't charging what the cost of the service is. The cost to deliver the service was incorrect. And so when you plan your expenses properly, you're able to really assess, am I really charging what it costs to put this pencil on a bookshelf or in the
Mhm.
hands of my consumer? And persons get to understand that when you look at your numbers, complete revenue and expense, it gives you more clarity, cause you
Yeah.
stress, and you're setting up your business for more profitability in the end,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
And I wonder, like in a typical medical practice, dental practice, the two biggest expense items are number one is people, staff.
Yeah,
Not yourself, the owner or owners, subtract those out, but everybody else. And the second one is your typically it's your office, your lease or your mortgage, whether you lease or own. And I wonder how many feel that those just aren't terribly movable numbers, at least in the short term. So what's left? Then it starts to become smaller numbers. What can it really do? It is what it kind of is. So we'll make sure that our accountant knows what they are. But there's really not much to do. Yeah,
yeah,
I don't know if that's the case, but I could see myself saying, look, my two biggest nuts are A and B, and there's not much I can do about them, at least easily. Then I'm just going to kind of move on with my life.
yeah.
Like, what's your reaction to that?
So I remember working with a doctor, and one of the things, those two were a concern for her. So she had a space that she believes she wasn't maximizing,
Hmm.
and I need the people. I need three nurses. I need somebody at the front desk, but I also have this space that's costing me a lot of money. And one of the things that I worked on with her was we spoke about what are the people doing, because sometimes
Hmm.
you can keep the people costs, but how are you maximizing that people cost so it's positively impacting your revenue?
Yeah.
And we spoke about having one of the nurses own, see one of your rooms as
Hmm.
a business line. And if your nurse owns that, she's the one who is generating the revenue, taking care of the patients who are in
Yeah.
the room for that particular procedure. And it was an eye opener for her, because now she realized that I really was not maximizing the people that I had. And by
Hmm.
taking that view where you're assigning ownership, and ownership to the point where the service, the care that the patients get was that nurse's responsibility.
Hmm.
So it now talk about service delivery. Um,
Yeah.
Number of patients that you're seeing in that room. Are you checking up to see that they're coming for their appointments on time? So it connects in such a way where you see those two costs as costs that you don't have control over, but you do, because
Hmm.
while you may not be able to control the expense side of it, knowing what is costing you and seeing what you're generating, you're now able to see how you can change. And
Yep.
the people were not being maximized, because one of the KPIs that she wanted to impact was people happiness. And they weren't happy because they weren't being utilized. And
Mm.
that's why sometimes when you have somebody look at your business from the outside, they're able to see things that you haven't seen. So when you brought up that point, I wrote down people and space because that example jumped out at
Yeah.
me. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good point. If you maybe you're not quite as trapped. So you think about it, well, I need all these people. So what you're saying is fair enough, but are they being as productive as they could?
Yeah.
Are they as happy, et cetera? And as far as space, I mean, I've had clients tell me this. They don't pay attention to their lease, which means they don't pay attention to when it renews. I promise you, your landlord is. And I at least, maybe Michelle, you do too, but I know some good resources. Everybody should know when their lease renews
Yes.
and everybody should be willing to renegotiate it. Don't do it on your own. Separate episodes, separate resources.
Mhm.
Contact us if you want some good referrals, because there's people who do this on your behalf full
Yeah.
time, and they're quite
Yeah.
good at it. And it just on that same note, we all sign contracts and subscribe to things and then forget about them. You should know everyone, and every so often you should say, "Am I really getting the most out of this?"
Yeah.
Um, oh my God, like, and I talked to other consultants in other parts of the world of healthcare. Like one, we just did an episode where you, this is on the revenue side, but it's the same concept. You get a fee schedule. You sign a contract with an insurance company that they're going to pay you so much for these different procedures. But you never actually get the amount paid because the contracts are cagey. Get it,
Yeah.
and then make
And
sure
who
you're
is
getting paid.
checking?
That's, well, the insurance company sure is.
Yeah.
So, it's two sides. Anyway, I mean, you know, this next question sounds fairly obvious, but just in case it's not, the basic why is it? So now you're setting them up. Now you've got to monitor your expenses, right? And I wonder, the good, like you could tell like a high performing practice from one that's not, even if you'd ever see the books, because you could just tell you owners, you guys have a grasp of what's going on. And that includes what
Yeah.
you're paying for stuff, and are expenses trending up or down, or why. Maybe it's a fact of life, maybe it's not, but just the importance of monitoring expenses.
Mhm.
And do the same thing. Well, my people costs are what they are. I have no choice. My lease is locked in for the next 4 years. Why monitor? Why bother?
And those are your two largest costs. So
So
why?
why bother with the rest? I mean, as they go, so goes the rest. I'm not sure that's entirely always true, but nevertheless, you should be looking at these. So talk about that more, like your experience with that.
So I think that you mentioned people costs and the cost for space. By
Just as
not
examples, just as
Yeah, yeah.
examples.
By not monitoring say those are your two largest costs. By not monitoring those, you don't know if there's room to negotiate.
Hmm.
Also, some other things that people miss. When you're doing your projections, which I don't know what your experiences has been, but many persons don't. When you have projections, you also need to add inflation. Your
Hmm.
costs may go up. Are you checking? Sometimes because things are moving so quickly, you're just affixing your signature to a document, not
Hmm.
realizing that maybe in the lease goes up by 7% every year, or it's just moving, so it's not a lot. When you're looking at your expenses, I often say to persons when they ignore some expense because it's considered quote unquote small, let's add up all of those small
I
expenses.
know, right? It's
It's
eye-opening.
hard. It's
Yeah.
it's eye it's eye-opening. And I remember I was talking to someone, well, just yesterday I was talking to a lawyer and we're looking at her income statement and she was saying, oh, I don't pay attention to it much because I know my largest cost is the contractors that I have working with. So I said to her that you're still having a challenge with service delivery and you're still looking to recruit persons. This amount that you're paying to contractors, that's two persons' salary.
Mm,
And so when you question your expenses, it gets you to answer those questions as well. Am I getting the most out of this? When you go through subscription, that is something that I think we should do once per month. We get drawn into a lot of things that we think can work for us, or this,
hmm.
somebody's selling the best AI tool, or this is needed, you need the CRM, you need this connection. It's expensive.
Hmm.
And when you go through and look at all your costs, you are able to see whether or not you're getting the best out of it and what to cut. And I remember during COVID, during the corporate years, we had just finished our strategic planning budgets. It was literally to be presented to the board on the 31st of March. And then early March, COVID
Mm,
shut down,
hmm.
like everything went through the door. And one of the things that we went to was let's look at our cost.
Yeah.
Let's look at our costs. And
Yeah.
you would have been amazed as to how much money we were able to find by reducing costs. And I know sometimes it might seem, I'm just paying $20 for this subscription. I'm not going to call the name of the company, but there's a particular company that wanted to raise your subscription fee this year. And it was a big thing because it's an application that a lot of people use. And because of the noise that came with it, they decided not to. But imagine if there wasn't a noise, you
Hmm.
and I would have been paying that subscription without even knowing. So I say to persons, look at your expenses the very same way you evaluate your revenue. Think about it the same way you go to supermarket and you're buying things. A lot of us can tell when the cost of tomatoes have gone up
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
the cost of eggs
Yeah.
because we're paying attention to it. So don't ignore your disposables. Don't ignore your stationery. Don't ignore your electric bill. There might be
Hmm.
small movements, and you don't realize until it's a big jump, and then you go back and you're looking at the trend and you're seeing, but this was going up over a period of time. So
Yeah.
it's just as important, and it also goes back, Carl, to as the owner of the private practice, you are also the CEO. And one of your super weapons is knowing your numbers.
Hmm.
And I often say to persons, we're not asking you to understand the full financial statement, knowing all your ratios,
Yeah.
but should be maybe 3 or 4 line items that you understand.
Hmm.
What is my profit margin?
Yeah.
Ask your accountant or Google, or, what does this mean? Let me know
Hmm.
profit margin, because if I know what my profit margin is, I can tell when there has been a movement in either direction on my revenue and my expenses. And in a market where you're not able to probably touch your revenue, can I impact my expenses? What is my cost to deliver my service? What's the
Yeah.
cost related to? Those are things that as CEO you should be monitoring on a monthly basis.
And that to me, I mean, you said that. I like the way um it was at the beginning of your answer. It was are my expenses produce as productive as they can be? So on the one hand, there's a subscription, it snuck in, nobody used it for the past 5 months. Okay, let's just cancel it because nobody would notice and it's clearly not valuable. But of the expenses that are here to stay, are they really um, producing as
Yeah.
well as they could? Which is doesn't have to be this sort of cold, sterile,
Right.
ruthless kind of question. Um, but listeners, anybody who takes insurance, that it's probably not going to go up very much next year,
Yeah.
assuming unless you change something, you get larger. I don't know what you negotiate differently, but inflation is a fact of life. So it is very rational for you to take a step back and talk to someone like Michelle and say, I just want to see if our expenses are yielding as much as they could,
Yeah. Yeah.
and if the answer after looking at it productively is truly, nope, we are hyper optimized. Okay, then it's something else. But that's the opportunity way. So and then your plans just go, it's like taking the plane to the next level. So our
Mhm.
expenses are producing the revenue we have today. So I hate this metric, but just to quote something, so our dollars per employee is blah.
Yeah.
What if that went up by 5% somehow, some way? Interesting,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
And if it is that is happening, then as a practice, get to look on different growth opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And different growth opportunities may not necessarily mean bringing somebody through the door. It may mean, how can I amplify my voice
Mm-hmm.
or to show my expertise?
Right.
Maybe it's, if you're interested, and these are just examples,
Mm-hmm.
maybe there's a book that you can write so you can leave something and show your place as an expert, place to be. Maybe you want to teach, maybe you want to speak. There are many
Mm-hmm.
different ways that
It's
you want to
true.
look at it. And you talk about optimizing your rewards. I noted this example. You may be paying, say you're rewarding your employees for good work,
Mm-hmm.
bonus or part of their compensation. Another thing that you may not see is maybe what you're giving them is not what they want. And what
Mm-hmm.
you could be giving them, you're still rewarding. So the outcome, they're still satisfied, maybe costing you less.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
one of the doctors I work with, she was the same doctor who was talking about people happiness. She said she had a birthday program that she was running, and she didn't believe that her team valued it.
Yeah.
So I did a SWOT, and I had interviewed a few of the persons on her team, and they said to me, we work a lot of times when it's maybe a public holiday or we're working half day. It would be nice if we could do something with our family. And I'm
Hmm.
like, that's a gift certificate to a restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
That is way costs way less than
Mm-hmm.
what you're giving them over here, but it
Mm-hmm.
has more impact because it means something to them. So
Yeah.
you get to know your team. We've done love languages for teams. You get to know the love language of your team and you meet them there and
Mm-hmm.
you get way more from them. So it's some of these intangibles. I think sometimes when we talk about expenses, persons believe that we need to cut and we need to, it's this hard and fast. No, it's understanding why you're spending that money, but you can't
Yeah.
understand it if it's not documented. If you're just thinking
Correct.
it's just there. What I find very funny, Carl, a lot of times when I'm working with clients, they are always so hesitant to talk about their income state, their financial statements. And I've gotten to realize it's not because of privacy, because we have a contract. It's because they've never looked at it. They don't understand it. They've never asked their accountants any question. They don't know what
Hmm.
the numbers are. And so I normally
So maybe
have
they're
to,
kind of intimidated by it. Like it's a lot of numbers,
they
nothing's
are.
defined. It's a separate language. Yeah.
They are.
Yeah.
And it's because that's just something that they don't look on. And so I really encourage persons, look at if there's anything that you want to understand, understand your
Yeah.
income statement,
Yeah.
understand what those numbers mean so you can control and ask questions around them. And it's not always to cut. How can I optimize? You
Yeah. And you go to your accountant. Some accountants are very good at this, and some are very, if you don't understand the explanations, you must speak up and say, try again. That was all jargon. I don't know what you just said.
yeah,
Try again. And if you can't, there are non-accountants who can read financial statements very,
yeah,
very fluently.
yeah,
So, find somebody else who can because it's important. That's the money coming in and going out. What if expenses are more than revenue? Common thing with a startup, but not only
yeah,
startups. What's the, I
yeah,
mean, even more to the point to plan.
yeah.
And I'll even throw in there, we'll go there first because then the following is what if, what if, uh, what if they're the same or what if they're, well, let's start there. What if expenses are more than revenue?
Which is very common in
Hmm.
many many whether you're a doctor, whatever field you're in, right? So the thing is, once you're able to plan, you can see when it's going to be more.
Hmm.
And you have options. Are you going to do a personal investment? Are you going to be getting a loan? Are you going to be getting a grant? But you need to know first.
Hmm.
Either of those options, I'm sure you want to be able to say, when am I going to be able to get out of this negative profit, or when am I going to come out of this net loss? But once you plan it, you're able to have that conversation. So if you're going to the bank for a loan, you're able to say, this is where we are without this investment.
Hmm.
When we get the investment, we're going to becoming a profitable company next time.
Yeah.
But you need to have it. You need to have the numbers down so you're able to speak confidently. I remember I was talking to someone, and one of the things I said to them is, when you have the numbers done, revenue and expense, you're able to ask for what you really need to make your business profitable.
And you can convince yourself because behind those, we think revenue is going to grow this fast and
Yes.
expenses are going to grow this fast, but not as fast. You should be saying, do we really believe that? We just, how are we going to grow revenue that, do we really think we can do that? Is it really believable?
Yeah.
Even if it's a
I love
stretch,
that.
that's fine. Because you have to convince yourself.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's like it's hope. And
Yeah.
even though hope is vital in daily life, hope is not a plan. Hope is the
Yeah.
opposite of a plan is that you can throw more money at a plan to make it go faster or change resources or cut or decide. Hope is just there. You can't
Yeah.
throw more money at hope and make hope work better.
Yeah.
It just is. But if that's all, I have to tell you, if you don't do it, Michelle, you kind of just have hope. And it
Yeah.
might work out, might,
Yeah.
but you
I'm happy
also
you said that.
you have no idea, like we can run this way for 6 months, or we can run this day for 30, do this way for 30 days. That's a big difference.
Yeah.
You know,
That's true.
we're not talking about like hyper analytical fire up spreadsheets left and right, but you have to have, we think we're going to grow revenue at this pace and our expenses are going to grow at that pace. And here's how we're going to keep them in line. You sit back. Do we really think we can do that?
Yeah.
I mean,
That's true.
is that in the realm of possibility? Yeah, it
Yeah.
is. Then go. But if it's not, you're like, I have no idea how we're going to get there.
Hmm.
You're not done.
Yeah. And I'm happy you said that. I worked on a business plan for a group of radiologists who wanted to start their own imaging center. Initially, it was a go, no go decision. It was go. Then when we got to, all right, they're ready to start, they found a space and were working on the financials, they realized that they would need to go 3 years. First of all, they need to put up an investment. They need to go 3 years without getting a salary. And they really had to ask themselves the question, as you said, they decided not to do it because of their current demand, where they're working with government and with another private practice owner. They don't have the time.
Mhm.
And so if I don't have the time right now, I can't give up that to go 3 years without an income based on where my life is. And that's true. It gives you something to answer a question, do I really believe that this is possible? And their answer was, Michelle, you know what? Thanks for this. We don't think we can go ahead because of the cost, and we won't be able to get the amount of loan that we need
Yeah.
from the government. So we'll just continue working until we're able to do something differently. So that is what it does for you.
Hmm.
Because I can tell you, when I sat down and did it for my business, when I saw the numbers, I'm like, something looks off.
Hmm.
Okay, I'm not able to see this many clients in 1 month by myself. Mark you, the revenue may look a lot and the end number looks good, but can I see these? I'm like, no, I can't.
Hmm.
All right, let me either reduce the number of clients or add another resource to support with some things, and then you can have a decision, because you, as you said, Carl, I'm glad you brought that up. You need to believe it. And when
Yes.
you see it, you need to say, am I able to do this? Do I believe it? If you are applying for a loan or a grant, you're able to tell that story with confidence. I am sure that if we're able to get this investment, we can turn things around.
Yeah.
Or, you know what? I don't think that we can.
Yeah.
So if you're,
And it's the same if you don't have to be a startup to go through these or in the heavy growth phase. Um, you know, uh, one of our clients, they haven't paid themselves in a few years, the owners. And so, you know, begs the question. So now you're staring expenses are greater than revenue. All right, we are the owners. We fix it. We either,
yeah,
cut our salary, don't take salary, throw a personal loan. I don't know what, but something. And then it begs, how long can we go on this way?
yeah.
And so when do we think we could start paying ourselves? All right, 10 months. What if I wanted to start paying myself again in 5 months? Okay, well, then what would it take? What would we have to do differently to
Yeah.
make that go faster? And it would take X, Y, and Z. Do we think we could pull that off? What would it cost to do? And you just, it doesn't have to do this deep dive exercise, but you start to get to, once you get to like a common sense, say, well, could we do that? I think we
Mhm.
could, or
Yeah.
I'm not sure, or we need, I don't know what, but um, you've got to either convince yourself, or if you're not sure you know enough to have the answer, then you got to find somebody who does and so does this sound convincing?
Yeah.
Help us
Yeah.
figure this out.
Help you figure it out.
Help us figure it out. Yeah.
We've when I in my time in corporate, we had two entities that ran for maybe 5 years that were not profitable. And I know it's a little bit different because then you can raise capital,
Sure, sure,
that
sure.
kind of thing. But the idea, the concept behind it is the same, where we looked at this entity, we were at a stage of, do we close down or do we continue?
Hmm.
When you run those scenarios, if we continued, it meant 5 years no profit. Along with that, there are all these initiatives that we're implementing that's going to help us to reduce the net loss and drive us more to a positive profitability. But at least you're able to have those conversations. And I think that is sometimes what's missing for entrepreneurs, where they see companies operating and they believe that things are always good.
Hmm.
And the conversations that we are suggesting that you have is the same conversations that they're having in a boardroom. It's the same conversations they're having in a management.
Yeah, if this listener from two corporate refugees, if it makes you feel any better, it's not all
No,
roses and rainbows and unicorns inside a corporation.
no,
It's a hellhole. Like
yeah,
it is hard.
yep,
But most of them, all of them, have the tools to be able to put together what's called a strategic plan.
correct.
And they frankly pressure test. This is one of the greatest, you know, um, schools I went to, probably you as well. Like you
Yeah,
really learn like to pressure test. And I would say, now we have to beat the crap out of this idea. And
it
if it's
has to
still
work.
standing, maybe it's pretty good. But you
Yeah.
literally very dispassionately, we think we're going to, double revenue in 5 years. And these are the three main drivers of how we're going to do it.
Mhm.
Do we believe that? Like now, okay, beat the ever living crap out of it.
Yep.
And if it's still standing, then yeah.
Yeah.
So there's no reason. I mean, if expenses are more than revenue, listener, you're there. Like
Yeah.
you owe it to yourself to somehow figure out with discipline, like, what is it going to take? This
Yeah.
is not sustainable,
You've passed the
you know?
first test. If you know, you've passed the first test.
Yes,
If
there
you
you
know,
go. I'm losing money.
Yeah,
And if your accountant says to you, or anyway, you're losing money, that's a signal to pretty much stop everything and go,
yeah.
wait,
You,
what? What? Um, how
I'm glad
long?
when you,
And so, and sometimes, sometimes it's, well, there's that balloon payment. That's 3 times a year. Got it. Fine.
yeah.
If it's on a sustainable and it just looks like, oof, this is not a one-off thing. This is man, business is slowing down, or our expenses have grown. What can we do? Um, yeah.
And there,
So
there are so many things, when you said just now, beat the crap out of our strategic plan, that brings back a lot of my my
our trauma.
trauma.
Because sometimes that's in a very large room where you beat the crap out of it and you hope nobody in the room, like, here it is. This is the, done and dusted strategic plan. And somebody
And
goes, what
Carl,
about blah? You're like, oh,
persons have slammed doors, persons have thrown their degrees, which school they went to,
yeah,
why it
right.
didn't work. But those are what we call war rooms. Like we
Mm-hmm.
know we're going in a war room because
Mm-hmm.
guess what? We need to meet budgets. And that's the thing. I say to persons, act like you have a CEO. The difference for us sometimes is these large corporations, they are publicly listed companies, or they have a board that they have to report to, so they have to find a way to make things happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's not roses as you share. So I laugh when you share that, beat the crap. Like, listen, I've been in those war rooms, and if you know already, you're at the first step.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Think about it the way you approach your budget for your home. Hey, you know what? This is the salary that I'm getting. These are my expenses.
Mm-hmm.
What can I cut?
Where's
What
my
can we
break
do?
even? Yeah. And
Yeah,
by the way, we say beat the crap and trauma, everything else. That's just because that was the culture of the companies
yeah,
we worked out, and lots
yes,
of others. Listener, you don't have to do it. That, like, the discipline is, all right, do we think this is going to work? What would it take to
yeah,
make this work? Um, who can, you could do it in a very, positive, collaborative
yeah,
way.
yeah,
But if your expenses are greater, if more is going out than coming in on a sustainable basis, something's got to change anyway.
yeah. And it
Something's got to
gets you
change
to
anyway.
answer the question that you shared when you shared that example, that it's where you may not be paying yourself a salary, but having the information
Mm-hmm.
helps you to know how long are you going to be going without a salary.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about, I see persons who do their business coach for couples who are in business. If you have a partner, you get to have those conversations as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going on this venture. This is how long it's going to take for us to turn a profit. But when we do, this is what the other side is going to look like. And
Yeah.
you get the buy-in from even your team to say, guys, we can't pay any bonus for the next 3 years. But if you're willing to stick with us, these are our
Right.
initiatives. These are the things that we're working on. So it brings a very wholesome discussion to the numbers, and not just, we're making $1 million in revenue. How much is it costing you to make that 1 million in
Yeah.
revenue?
And by the way, some of your staff have realized, oh my God, we're losing money. And
Yeah,
so if you've got a plan that you believe to turn it around, they might believe it too,
yeah,
which will help keep the good ones around. We have covered a lot of ground, as we always do. Is there
yes.
anything you think we missed?
I
I
think
have
we
one idea, but go ahead.
I can't think of anything. No, it's just I always want persons to remember that there's always a different way to operate.
Hmm.
And you don't have to, you may be sitting, before we started recording, Carl and I were talking about algorithms.
Mm.
Your surrounding is like an algorithm. If you're surrounded by persons who they're just burnt out, oh, I don't look at my numbers and we're profitable. I never did a business plan, I never did a strategic plan, and I'm good, and you're feeling burnt out and you're still with those people, it could be that you need a different
Yeah.
opinion, you need a different group, you need to be around person. You can definitely see persons who are operating their practices
Yeah.
like a well sterilized oil machine. It doesn't mean they're always profitable,
Yeah.
but they are so confident in the work that they have put in to lay that foundation, that they have a road that they're driving on. I know right now it's a little bit rocky,
Yeah.
but I can see down the horizon, if we continue on this pathway, that things are going to get better. So I want you to, leave you with some hope that there is a better way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing I want to bring up, it's maybe it's more of an advanced concept. It's the idea that when you look at your revenue and your expenses, your the rate of growth of your revenue. So if you grow 10% in revenue from last year to this year, your expense growth should be less than that,
Yep.
whatever that is. And if it is, what that means is that you've gotten more productivity out of your expenses, which
Yeah.
you ought to, which
You
you
should, you
ought
should
to.
repeat that. You should repeat that slowly for
So
for
think of it this way: if you did $100,000 in revenue last year, and then this year you do 120,000, so that's 20,000 more in revenue, in sales, in patient collections. Awesome. But if your expenses grew by, and that's a 20% increase, if your expenses grew by 25%, you lost a little. I mean,
yeah,
you're still profitable. And even though the dollars, I haven't done the math, but you're on a path where if you continue that, eventually your revenue and expenses are going to be the same
yeah,
because your revenue is
faster.
growing, your expenses are growing
Expenses
faster than your revenue. It's best, you know, if your expenses are growing slower
lower.
than how much your revenue is growing.
Yeah.
Not the numbers, the percentage growth. So
Percentage.
the rate of growth. And if you are, you've got a nice, well-oiled machine. If they're
Yeah.
growing at the same rate, if you're growing at the same rate, what does that mean at the end of the year? You worked harder because you paid more in expenses,
Hmm.
but you didn't get any more for it
Yeah.
because the
Yeah.
rate of growth.
So you talk
Who
about real
wants that? Yeah.
real growth. And I'm so happy you brought that up because when we would talk about efficiency in the organization, that is a concept that we would use as well.
Mhm.
Because we talk about efficiency, it's always expense management. What does expense
In, in,
management
in a
mean?
bubble. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, that's too expensive. Well, wait, time
yeah.
out. Might be
It
just
doesn't
right.
mean it doesn't
Yeah.
mean you're cutting your expenses because for business to grow, it's gonna cost you. But as you say, am I getting more? It's almost like going back to the example I gave. You have people, but are they generating more revenue than it's costing you to have them, or is the revenue growing
Hmm.
faster than your expenses? I hope the listeners get that, and
Yeah.
that is why it's really good to have those conversations with your accountant or with anybody. I'm a business growth strategist. I understand
Hmm.
financial statements as well, but just ensure that you know that. So you
Yeah.
have maybe 4 or 5 KPIs that you're tracking. What was the growth of my revenue year over year, month over month, quarter over quarter? What's the growth of my expenses?
Yeah.
Or when you have those large expenses that are coming in, account for them, plan for them. If
Hmm.
you have taxes to pay, maybe you're accruing, you're putting those aside. There are just different ways
Yeah. Yeah. And
to,
listen, the rate of growth, comparing rate of growth of collections versus expenses, there are plenty of scenarios where that's not going to happen and that's all fine, but that should be part of a plan. For example, you're adding a new service, right? So for a while, and you got to hire somebody to run it. Okay, for a while, the expenses are going to be greater than revenue, and the growth rate of expenses are going to be higher than the growth rate of revenue. Fine. But there
because
should
you
be,
know.
because you've planned your expenses versus paying what comes, but there's a plan in there. And the
Yeah,
second part of the plan is after a reasonable amount of time, if it's just not getting there, then maybe this was not a great idea after all.
yeah,
And because the numbers aren't working. And
yeah,
so then you can decide what you want to do about it. You can keep
yeah,
it, you can change it, or you can stop it.
yeah.
Right. So, but you can't do any of these things unless
If
you know. Yeah. So where should somebody start, Michelle? The scenarios we've caught a listener's attention. You and I think collectively seem to know more people who fit, I'm not sure what's going on in these financial statements. Where would you suggest somebody start?
start by documenting your the expenses that you're aware of. And you know
And in
what
fact, your account, if you have an account, has that,
they
you
have
know,
it.
they
So you
should.
plan
Yeah.
your next meeting
Hmm.
before you do anything you're planning for, whether you're planning for quarter 4, if the calendar year matches your financial year, or you're planning for 2026, the
Hmm.
first meeting you're having is with your accountants.
Yeah.
Let's sit and let's look at what my income statement is saying, and let's have a conversation so I understand what's happening,
Yeah.
what's the story behind my numbers.
Yeah.
Once you have that, there is no harm in having somebody look at that, no, look at those numbers with you, because we don't know our blind spots.
Yeah.
We are parents, we're business owners, we worked in corporate. There were many times where we needed somebody to give us some kind of advice, and we're like, oh, why didn't I think of that? Because you're in the doing. And I
Yeah.
often say when you're doing operational stuff, it's very hard for you to see the big picture. So sit with your accountant, your first meeting before you plan anything for next year. ensure you understand what your numbers are saying and
Yeah.
sit with those numbers and think about, why did I do that? What was the decision around that? Where am I? What's my thought process about next year? And jot those ideas down, write those thoughts down, whether or not it's in a systematic or a formatted way, but
Hmm.
get it out and then get somebody who's a business advisor who can then guide you in creating that plan
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Something
Yeah. And
that they question it. I often ask persons, you're saying to me that you are overwhelmed, but you want to add these two services. Who is going to be delivering these two services? I know there may be a cash cow right now, but it's going to cost you something, either
mhm.
your energy, your sleep, your mental health, your time,
Yeah.
or it's going to cost you some money. So, I would, those two things I would advise person. Well, it's kind of
Yeah.
three,
Yeah.
but
Right. And
yeah,
as you're going through with your accountant, ask for at least the big ones. How do I compare
yeah,
to your other clients who you think are really good at this? And if they don't know or they're not sure, switch accountants.
yeah,
Honestly, switch anybody. And this is my occasional plug. Find somebody with deep expertise in healthcare because um, running a successful private practice is different than running a successful restaurant or
yeah,
a general professional services firm of any type. And staff. So if your staff costs are 60% of collections, I'm totally making this up. I don't know if that's good or bad, but it ought to be at 40. Then what you want to hear from your accountant is, look, I have a bunch of other private practices and they are around the low 40% range. This seems high.
yeah,
And maybe there's a reason, but if they can't get, because, what is that? That's your staff cost and 60%. It doesn't give you too much context. What are the high performers at?
yeah.
And you
You
can
want to
decide
know
what
what
you
your
want to do about
industry,
it.
you need to know what your industry benchmark is to
It's
see if,
helpful.
should I be sleeping? Should I be awake? Should I be worried? You need to know what it is.
Right.
And as you said, if your accountant don't know or they aren't working with anyone who is hitting the benchmark, then
Yeah.
that's a sign.
Yeah. Now, your accountant, don't expect your accountant to know what to do about it.
Yeah.
But that's the value of it's the comparison. The comparison is insightful. Um, Thank you. Thank you for coming back on Practice
Thank you.
Care. Always fun to talk to you, learn a lot. Um, and yeah, thanks for coming back. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And I do hope that, as we were talking, I'm like, they could employ us to teach some business in these programs in universities.
Mm, please. It's just I've gotten frustrated. It's not new, medical schools,
Yeah.
not a sentence devoted to the world of business. But I
Yeah.
become kind of angry about it because a healthy proportion of the graduates that they send out into the world are going to go into practice, which is a business, and they don't even try.
I don't,
And
yeah.
I think it's a huge miss. Anyway, um, thank you for coming back. We've got the contact information you provided, so we're going to get that into the show notes for your episode, for Michelle's episode. So now anybody who wants to contact Michelle, you've got another way to do it. 2 quick points before wrapping up. First, if you're like Michelle or us and you serve private practice owners, or you're one yourself and you've got some experience or expertise on the business side of private practice, and don't overthink that. It can be simple stuff. It usually is. I promise you, if there's something you've figured out, plenty of others haven't. And if that's the case, it's always the case. Come on Practice Care so that you can tell the world about it. In the show notes of every episode, including Michelle's, there's a link, a couple of clicks. Super simple. Just tell us what's on your mind and we'll get you scheduled as soon as possible. And finally, also, say this every time, subscribe to Practice Care, one word. We're easy to find. We're everywhere. Any podcast player, whatever. We're on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, every player. Just subscribe, and that way you'll get you'll get updates on new episodes, which we drop every week. Thanks very much. See you next time.